my fellow Americans. If you think you know politics, think again. I'm Michael Cohen, and every week on When You Know, we're pulling back the curtain on power, politics, media, and the people making headlines. On my new WABC radio show, you'll hear conversations from names that you know. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., Anthony Scaramucci, Alan Dershowitz, and many, many more. Maybe, just maybe, we'll even hear from the president. No scripts, no spin, just real conversations with people who were in the room where it happened. And trust me, we've got some very big surprises coming. Look, I've spent years at the center of politics, controversy, and power. I know the players, I know the stories, and now I'm bringing you inside. When You Know, Sundays at 5 p.m. on WABC Radio, and When You Know Unleashed, wherever you get your podcasts. Because with me, you never know who's going to show up.
Traditional home security only alerts you after a break-in, and that's too late. Simply Safe is changing that.
Stop. This is Simply Safe. Police are on the way.
We don't just alert, we stop crime before it starts. Simply Safe, plan starting around $1 a day. Save 50% on your new system with professional monitoring at simplysafe.com/Spotify or with promo code Spotify.
Outdoor deterrence requires a Simply Safe Active Guard outdoor protection plan starting at $49.99 a month. Visit simplysafe.com/licenses for alarm license information. Tennessee 2012.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to The Left versus the Right. I'm David Paterson with Jake Novak, and we're going to tell you about our person of the week. Jake, who is our person of the week?
Our infamous person of the week.
It's not the Yankee catcher who's hit 27 home runs or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, and
it's not him.
No, and it's not. I probably Jalen Brunson is the person of every week.
Jalen Brunson will be the person every week
until something bad happens with the Knicks.
But so the second person of the week is Anna Maria Archila.
Yeah.
Anna Maria Archila. I know she's a household name to all of you listening to the show, but for the few of you that don't know who she is, take it away, Jake.
Well, I'm going to give you her very long title. And by the way, in politics, the longer your title, the more baloney the job is. So she is the head of the Office for International Affairs in the Mamdani administration, but she's not a diplomat. She has no international political experience. She's just an activist. And she tried, Governor, to have a meeting with the Iranian ambassador to the UN this past week, which is not allowed. The United States does not have diplomatic relations with the terrorist state of Iran. Yes, the Trump administration is having ceasefire negotiations with them, but that's different. That's not diplomatic relations.
Well, that was second on her list.
Yeah, she wants to do that. And, all joking aside, we know now that Iran has been trying to assassinate President Trump. We know that the Mamdani administration is anti-Trump. I mean, who knows what they would have talked about? Would they have would she have agreed to have given President Trump's movements and access to the NYPD? I mean, you might think I'm crazy to say that, but this is why we don't do this. This is why the State Department doesn't allow local politicians to have side meetings with countries that we don't have diplomatic relations with. Actually, even if there are friends, they're not allowed to do that. By the way, that still has to go through the State Department, Governor. And so the meeting never happened. But this is really, really frightening. It's one thing when it's so scary.
Tragically, I always thought about the presidents who've been assassinated. And when they've happened, most of the time, the shooter missed. There was an attempt on President Roosevelt where the shooter missed in Chicago.
But they got the mayor.
And the mayor was killed.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that we really need to beef that up because President Trump now has been hit twice and has had situations where they didn't land Air Force One or they landed it someplace else because of some threats. And here's where you've got to put your political card away and think about human beings. He happens to be the president. He got more votes than the person he ran against, who got no votes because he's not alive. No, I'm just joking. But there's an eerie feeling I've had about him when I see him get on and off planes and that kind of thing. And, we don't want any more tragedy on top of the ones we've had.
We don't. And I'll say something else about presidential assassinations. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff we don't know about the JFK assassination, but one of the things that I have always believed true is that Oswald did have some KGB connections, but by the time the assassination happened, they had already washed their hands of him, probably because he was just such a misfit.
Right.
But that said, I really don't think we've ever had truly a foreign plotted assassination of one of our presidents. All the presidents in our country have been assassinated, Lincoln and things like that. I don't think were foreign planned.
No, they were.
And that's what's scary about this. These are foreign enemies planning to kill our president. And the attempts on President Trump's life, I think some of the things that we're going to find out may have had some foreign funding. I do. Luckily, they weren't successful. So this is a whole added caveat to the whole thing.
And there seems to have been a raised concern on the part of the Secret Service and those who protect the president, because he's still making trips to all over the world. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember a president that traveled as much as him in his time, and he's 80 years old.
Yeah. It's and you wonder about it. He's going to these places like where the president, our country is not liked, and has always been the case. And then of course there had been these but a cynical person will say like, well, yeah, but the shooting attempts on him were here in this country. Okay,
that's okay.
yeah. I mean, again, it's but as much as I am dismayed by the fact that the Secret Service is no longer under the auspices of the Treasury Department, which I'm not a fan of pretty much the Washington bureaucracy as a whole, but you got to admit the Treasury Department runs a tighter ship for the most part than the rest of the executive branch. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and when the Secret Service was under their auspices, which because they also used to crack down on counterfeiting, that was the justification for it. I love that. I don't love that they're under Homeland Security, but that said, boy, these guys and gals do a great job. I mean, it's a lot of hard work. No, they botched things during the 2024 election and in Butler, Pennsylvania, and we're lucky we got away with that one. But still, when you consider the consistent targets that all of our presidents are, not just President Trump, the fact that we haven't had a successful assassination of our president now in 63 years, it's not like you can have a parade about that, Governor, but we should be relieved by that.
I don't know that I had added the numbers up. In other words, I knew it was a long time ago, and I knew it was in the midst of other assassinations in the 60s, such as President John F. Kennedy's brother, Robert F. Kennedy, in June of 1968.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, 2 months earlier, on April 4th, the assassination of Martin Luther King. Ever since then, you haven't had that major stop the world kind of assassination that forces everyone to be accountable to what happened, and it really is a credit to the agencies that have had the men and women who stood by us to make sure that we could have 63 years without fatal assassination.
Yeah, and so all the more reason why appointees of this mayor's office, which by the way, filled with appointees making $200,000, $300,000 a year for jobs that have no impact, a positive impact on this city, while we're cutting, where we're not getting the extra cops we wanted and things like that. But all the more reason why you cannot have local politicians or even their appointees meeting with governments that are plotting to assassinate our leaders for any reason whatsoever. I mean, I'm sure the explanation will be, well, we were just going to talk about how maybe we can make sure that we have nicer relations, and we're trying to try a back channel. You'll hear the term back channel, which is every traitor's line. I'm trying to do back. Ted Kennedy tried to meet with the Soviets to help them plot against Ronald Reagan's Star Wars initiative. Back channel negotiation. No, you can't do that. Know your lane here.
Yeah, if it's a back channel, it means you shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah. Think of Jane Fonda, going over to Hanoi, and people thought it was just bad because she was there and she was smiling with people. But, more details, Governor, of that trip have been released over the years. So, I always thought the worst thing that she did was that she got on one of the anti-aircraft guns and straddled it like it was a toy. And of course, it turned out that those were guns that had killed American, airmen. But worse than that, there were prisoners of war in Hanoi who were successfully able to get a message to her while she visited saying, please come and visit us and get the cameras on us because this will help our conditions. And she refused to do it.
Wow.
So not a good person.
I mean, especially when you are on a mission where you're trying to be a peacemaker or you say you're trying to be a peacemaker and you get that kind of information, you've got to find a way to get back in touch with those parties. And it's just really a miracle that most of them got out of there with their lives.
Yeah. So Anna Maria Archila, I would don't explain it to me what you were trying to do. Don't explain it to the governor. Don't explain it to Republicans in Congress or the State Department. I want you to meet with the relatives of Iranians who have been slaughtered, not just in this last few months, but in the last years. People who were just out there protesting for their right to vote and their right to take the head coverings off. Explain to them why you wanted to legitimize this evil regime with this meeting, what you were trying to accomplish. Were you going to try to advocate for the families of these people who can't go, here in the United States, who can't go and visit the graves of their loved ones or tend to their estate or things like that? Because I doubt it. I don't think that was what your interest was. So explain it to them. Don't explain it to me. Explain it to them, and there are a lot of them. They're in Great Neck, Long Island. They're also in Los Angeles. Go talk to them about what you were trying to accomplish with this meeting. I'd be fascinated to hear your answer. Of course you won't. You won't have the guts to do that.
Now, for the audience, Jake told me about this when I came in today. I didn't know this yesterday when I should have. But just to dig down on it a little bit, was Mamdani made aware of her action going to meet with this person?
Yeah, we're not getting a lot of the details. Again, the crack news media, which used to be the greatest, this used to be the toughest news media in the world.
Did Mamdani comment on what she did?
Haven't seen any comment yet. I'll keep looking. I don't think he's made a comment. But this, the news media, even when we had popular mayors who had been reelected by larger margins than their first time, the news media, we got a guy here at WABC, Dominic Carter, who used to be real tough on Rudy Giuliani when he was mayor, and Ed Koch during his more popular years. You didn't have an easy time with the New York news media, but this mayor is having a really easy time. I would say all the mayors recently in the last 10 years or so, this news media in New York City has absolutely lost its charge. That inner circle dinner that they have every year, which is the New York City news media's a celebration of itself. It felt to me like I was looking at a bunch of people I felt like I was in a scene in The Love Boat. There wasn't, it wasn't serious. It felt like I'm here. Here we're looking at all these celebrities. The Love Boat was a show made for looking at celebrities either 10 years before they were famous or 20 years after they were famous. That was why it was sponsored by all the denture cleaners. So it felt like that. I felt like I was on an episode of The Love Boat. Like, oh, look at this person who used to be a journalist, and now they're like standing up on stage singing off key. I mean, that's what it was like.
The inner circle dinners really lost its sparkle because a lot of times there were people who really had issues with each other, and they were there and they were in the same room, and they were barely able to keep from throwing a chair at
I was well behaved though. Mayor Mamdani was actually sitting not 3 feet behind me. He was at the table next to us. And really? I took a lot of pictures of him, and I actually, I had a lot of friends saying, "Oh, did you yell at you?" I was like, what will be accomplished if I yell at him at a dinner? But I did make some comments about some of the skits that were going on stage that made him laugh really hard. So maybe I could have caused him to have a choking incident, possibly, and I would have been arrested for that probably, but I didn't. But he came out fine, so it's okay.
So listen to this. In 2003, I became the minority leader of the Senate. And the LCA, which is Legislative Correspondents Association, asked me if I would, do a skit before, during the program. So what I did is I got a friend of mine to dress up as Joe Bruno.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Who was at the time the majority leader of the Senate.
Republican.
Republican, but we called him the majority weight leader. And I come in dressed the way Muhammad Ali used to come in.
Oh.
And so I'm obviously threatening him before the match even starts. And they asked me to say something before the match, and I talked about the fact that that Mr. Bruno never really faced off against anybody, and I said that he never faced off. And I named boxers that he never faced off against, and I said he's a chicken. He's a chicken. Now remember that the legislative correspondence dinner was in the egg. That's what they called it.
Yeah.
So I told them, I'm going to beat the chicken back into the egg.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, man.
Well done.
And so then the guy, my friend, we start the fight, and I hit him a few times, and he didn't seem to get the message. So I really hit him this time. He falls down on the ground.
Oh, boy.
And they count him out. And then when they give the official decision, they give it to him. He won the fight, and he stands up. And but I would have to say they probably remembered that LCA show longer than these, where people would get up and just make these insinuations, and they're really not funny. And but that was my call to action back in the day.
Well, meanwhile, I'm on the phone to D'Agostino and other people to make sure that the statute of limitations hasn't run out on the personal injury that you incurred to that person. Maybe we can get some money out of this.
Right,
we'll
exactly.
all go in on it. We'll all go in on it.
So this whole situation of government employees taking actions on their own without any supervisory advice or endorsement. In the end, we can crack jokes about it, but this is a very serious type of thing.
Yeah, and John Kerry pulled this nonsense too after he left the State Department, also meeting in the Middle East, undermining certain policies. I actually never believed this. I remember when I was learning in college, I said, well, we always believed that American politics and our political differences ended at the water's edge. Once we were dealing with foreign countries, friend or foe, that we were more of a united front. I'm not really sure if that was ever true, but it's certainly much less respected, and people aren't even trying to pretend it's true anymore. You have people openly cheering on the enemies of this country. And we've talked about this. When you get to the point where your hatred for President Trump now leads you to want to have meetings with and support for Iran or China what the heck is the matter with you? That's going beyond the old sibling rivalry thing where you hate your brother, you hate your sister, but if the other kids in the schoolyard start beating them up, you'll defend them.
You come to their defense right away.
But in this case, if you join in the beating up, then you're a psychopath. You really are. And I can't tell you any development in American history that I've ever seen, Governor. And I was a little young for the Vietnam War stuff, and I was too young to really, understand Watergate. I was alive for those things, but didn't certainly follow them. But and even 9/11, I can't tell you anything, Governor, in American history that's happened during my lifetime that has frightened and saddened me more than the absolute mental illness that I've seen from these people who absolutely hate Donald Trump, to the point that they are willing to do harm to themselves, harm to others. And the funny thing about it is they think everybody else is in the cult. No, the inmates are running the asylum and more these places where I've met people who just, anything that he does, they're against. And if he said oxygen is good, they'll stop trying to breathe. There's something. This is really sad, and I can't think of anything that saddened me more in my whole lifetime.
Well, one thing you can be assured of, Jake, and that is that the inmates do not run the asylum here at WABC, and they have ordered me to give up some time, you as well, so that some of our kind sponsors who've made it possible for us to be on the air can be heard themselves. So we'll be back right after these brief commercial messages.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light Drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
The left versus the right.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back with Jake Novak here on the left versus the right. And Jake has prevailed. He was trying to make the points about President Trump and the hate that he ignites and the way people just seem to lose their minds when his name is even mentioned. And let's hear a little more about that.
Yeah, we were talking off the air about how, look, I understand that there are times when President Trump baits these people who hate him. He'll say something that I think he absolutely knows this triggers the folks who are angry at him. And in a perfect world, who am I to say how someone else should act, especially the president? But in a perfect world, I wish he didn't do that. At the same time, and this is something I realized in 2016, that the pugnaciousness of President Trump is kind of an either-or kind of thing. In other words, somebody who fights too much is the kind of person who's going to fight when it's appropriate. And it feels like the people who don't fight, if you either fight too much or you don't fight at all, and I'll take the person who fights too much over the person who doesn't fight at all, if that makes any sense.
And I think in his case, you never really know how much he has ignited it. I think I told you in a previous show about the time that I was telling him that an employee of mine who he didn't like, how I should have gotten rid of him, which is what Trump suggested to me at the time. And we started trading, stories about what this guy was. And both of us had our hands raised. Why am I raising my hand now? None of you on the radio can see it.
He's raising his hand, folks.
But I was gesturing, he was gesturing. And all of a sudden, the president grabs me by the shoulder and turns me in the same direction where he is. And he says, no, everything's fine. It's an old friend who died. We're talking about an old friend. And I think that's when I realized, concurrent with all these other features, he has an incredible sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because he turned that situation where I think the media people thought we were arguing, and he turned it completely around in a second.
I think every person who grew up going to church or synagogue regularly in this country will know what I'm about to say or be able to relate to it. I never had one of those moments as a journalist where I would hear President Trump speak even before he was president and look to myself and say, who talks like this? Because in every synagogue, I'm convinced every synagogue and church has guys about Trump's age sitting in the back who are like that. And if you're a kid who grew up going, they always were willing to talk to you. I used to sit in the back with them. Now, my dad was the rabbi, so they always wanted to kind of kibitz with me.
Right.
But we talked sports, we talked other things, and they were blustery. They were arrogant, basically, but they were, at the end of the day, they had a heart of gold. They gave me candy. They wanted to talk about baseball and football with me. They thought it was great when I would predict games as a 9, 10, 11-year-old, that kind of thing. And I'm used to that cadence. And I think, and by the way, I had a very lucky upbringing in that I really had exposure to people of all ages my entire childhood. Most kids don't, unless, other than their grandparents, if they're lucky enough to see them regularly, don't really see people any older than their parents. And they don't know how to communicate with them. I mean, I had as many elderly friends as young friends as a kid. I mean, the Golden Girls wasn't just like a show about, the Golden Girls was like, oh, that was like a show about my circle when I was a kid. I was like, let me watch this show. I know those characters. So that's one of the things, too. Like, I understand that cadence. It's a Queens, New York kind of bravado, but without being really that harmful. And because I remember looking around the newsroom at CNBC when President Trump was first running and seeing all these younger journalists there who were just aghast. They couldn't believe they'd never seen anyone talk like this or act like this. And I said to them, all of them, I said, you guys didn't ever go to church, did you?
No.
And they were like, no. I was like, okay, well, yeah, I knew that about you already, just because you just don't know. There's a character in it. It doesn't matter how wealthy the congregation is or where it is in the country. Every congregation, church or synagogue has the crazy guy who comes or crazy woman who comes, has the blustery guys who sit in the back, and has the busy. I mean, these are all like characters. You could really why there hasn't been like a really good church or synagogue based sitcom, I don't know. Probably because the folks in Hollywood can't relate, but I grew up with those people.
They can't.
Yeah.
And actually, there were a lot of incidents that occur, and I didn't go to church that much. My mother was a Baptist and my father was a practicing Catholic, so I couldn't wait because they'd go to church in different places.
So you were a Baptist.
Yeah, I didn't have to listen to either one of them. But the issue was that a lot of things will come up in a church where they wouldn't come up, let's say at a school, and it becomes kind of an issue, and where there's this kind of scoffing at the older people and that sort of thing. It can be injurious at times because a lot of times people, they don't intend to do it, but they bring their problems to church.
Yeah. Or again, the just humorous things that happen. I mean, there was one Saturday morning where one of the married couples, elderly couples, came into the synagogue, and the man's teeth were very small, and the woman's teeth were very, very large. And my dad and I just looked at each other and we said, they switched their dentures. And they grabbed the wrong dentures this morning. Those kinds of, that doesn't happen in school. You don't see that in your corporate life. Come on, this is a piece of Americana I just gave to you, and you missed that out. You missed out if you didn't go to services regularly. That's all I can tell you. You thought I was going to come on and be an evangelizing Jew or something like that and talk about. I can do that on another program. I'll do that on the Reverend the Rabbi. But on this program, I'm going to tell you that if you go to services regularly, you will encounter these characters. And if it's a good church and a good synagogue, there will also be good refreshments afterwards. So, I mean, what else could you ask for?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what got a lot of people to go after they, were 9 and 10 and they had trouble with sitting through the service. But once you hit about 14 or 15, you can get a great meal over there. All you have to do is, listen to the minister or the rabbi. And when they're done, they go in the back and it's a festival. I
was pounding down Manischewitz at 8, 9 years old. 5, 6 cups at a time, those little baby cups. But still, it would have been a 12-step program, but they left me out of it. So.
I guess so. You never overindulged.
No, not on that kind of stuff. Although, by the way, and this is a great urban American story. Now, people don't know about this anymore because sadly we've moved on to harder drugs and things. But they used to have something in America's urban world called winos. People who would sit on the corner and drink cheap wine. And one of the wines that was really popular with winos was the kosher wines, because the kosher wines used to be, they have wonderful wines now from Israel, by the way, which win awards. Don't believe all the bad stereotypes. But in the old days, the American-made kosher wines were very sweet. And winos like sweet wine because you could chug that down faster than, something that was a little bit more palate friendly. And so one of those kosher wines was called Magen David, which in Hebrew means the Star of David, but the street name was Morgan Davis. And this is a great story. So the label on Magen David wine was a bunch of people sitting around at a table with prayer books doing the grace after meals. It's a long grace. The grace after meals in a Jewish meal is long, so you need to have you can't memorize it. So I remember there was a liquor store owner in my neighborhood in Virginia when I was growing up, Jewish area of Norfolk, Virginia, who said there was a guy who used to come in all the time and say, I want that Jewish wine, Morgan Davis. And God, he didn't know what it was. That one where the label is everyone sitting around the table playing cards because they had the little prayer books. He thought they were playing cards.
And because he saw the street sign.
Yeah. So he saw, So, I mean, there used to be winos. That used to be a thing. And so if you're wondering why did these putrid, super sweet wines, and there's not enough Jews in America to keep these businesses alive? Well, in the 50s, 60s, and in the 40s, winos were buying the kosher wines. Now you know. Where are you going to learn this anywhere else?
Nowhere, but on the left versus the right. We find data and make inquiry in places that other shows wouldn't dare to. But so in that regard, there clearly seems to be a disengaged country right now to some extent, and that brings me to our third personality of the week, Mr. Graham Plattner, who from day to day has no idea what he's doing. Tomorrow, Monday, I would say, he's supposed to be getting out of the race. And what an abomination. Because the real problem, as I see it, Jake, is not to blame the Democrats who are there right now, who tried to get him out, but to actually blame the people who opened the door so he would get in.
Yeah. But first of all, I mean, we've talked about this guy before on this program. And one of the things I said several weeks ago was and I don't think Republicans are going to do this. I didn't think it then, and I still don't think it now. But I thought I openly said on this program and others, if you're a Republican or you're conservative in America and you're not prepared to use the term Graham Plattner as often as the other side says things like January 6th are very fine people, then you're not really equipped for today's politics. I don't love that, but the Republicans and conservatives should say the name Graham Plattner. That should be out of their mouth every single day for years to come, really, because he's not getting out fast enough. The Democrats will say, well, we did force him out. No, you didn't. Not in time, not after you were given a lot of warnings, and not before Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren and Ro Khanna went out of their way. I mean, literally went to see this guy and to prop him up and to say the nicest things about him. And of course, he was already dropping in the polls. The last poll I saw a few days before things started to go really south for him, he was only up 2 points by Susan Collins. And Susan Collins has come back from bigger deficits than that, by the way, in her Senate campaign. In her Senate campaign,
absolutely.
So, and he had been up by 9-10 points comfortably a couple of months ago. So, no, I do not allow them to use this. Well, we did finally, once we saw something was more credible, we stood up. No, you saw the polls going down. And more importantly, how you could think this guy was an acceptable candidate in the first place, polls or no polls, is, I think, something I didn't say before. I think this is part of the cynical, misbegotten notion of what America is by so many people in the Democratic Party. And I'm not going to excuse a lot of establishment Republicans also. I think that basically the political class looks at the rest of America as a bunch of
idiots.
Yeah, idiots, racists, fools. And so they figured this guy looks like one of them, even though he's not. He went to Hotchkiss. I mean, Hotchkiss is it's harder than most colleges. It's an incredible school. I should only have gone there, right? His business was basically owned by his mother. He's a rich kid. No, he's not. But they thought he looks like this. He's disgusting. And that's what America is. And, this is what frustrates me tremendously. It's always frustrated me about the misbegotten conceptions of who Americans are. That's not who Americans are. I'm sorry. I don't care how much you think you know about America. That's not who Americans are in either party. I will say that. And they deserved many, many decades of punishment for backing this guy.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. And it is... in the time that we've worked together on this show, I have noticed, but I've never really raised it, that when you make a strong point, you also will cover the part that you probably didn't want to address it in that situation. In other words, having some fairness on the other side, such as a few minutes ago when you said, and it even goes on in some of the bastions of the Republican Party. Most people wouldn't have said that.
Well, thank you for noticing. That's important to me. But by the way, it's really wonderful that you asked that as we come out of this Graham Plattner thing, because what a number of people were decent enough to say was, well, here's what the Democrats got themselves into trouble. They were only interested in winning. They don't have any principles. They don't have any beliefs in things. It's just about winning. And that's how they got themselves into trouble with this guy, because when they saw that his polls were strong, when they were strong, they were like, whatever, we'll just win. And we don't. And to me, listen, you know what? I see this in my personal life. There's a lot of people who say like, oh, Jake, I see you're a conservative. Does that mean you're MAGA? Because if I tell them that I voted for Trump, or and what I usually say, and this is 100% true, I support the vast majority of Donald Trump's policies. Do I know the man? No. Will I ever know him? I don't know. Maybe. Actually, now that I'm working here, it's possible one day I'll get to, but I doubt it. That's not, and I've never felt that supporting personalities was the way to go, or being on a team. You know, another thing I say all the time, Governor, is I'm a member of the oldest surviving cult in the world. I gave it the office. I'm not joining another one. And by the way, my oldest surviving cult in the world, every time a human being has been venerated as being divine or almost divine, it doesn't work out too great for us at all.
No.
You know, so it's very much against our beliefs. And that's not to mitigate what Christian. I'm just saying that when Jews try to go against who we are, we're either not going to be Jews anymore, or non-Jews will see that we're faking. You know, like they did in Spain and places like that, where they, you know, Jews they were trying to pretend to be Christian for a while. That didn't work out. You know, so my point is, it's that's where it comes from. You know, I feel like I've been given a very healthy, because I'm not a mean guy. I'm not like a cynic, but a very healthy doubting reaction to being on teams for the team's sake. Listen, if I like someone's policies, I will be all there for them or her. Absolutely. But it doesn't mean I'm signing up for that team next time before I see the fine print. That's all. And I think that I wish more Americans were like that. This isn't a team game. The only team game we're on is the America team, or the team of right versus wrong. And too bad that, you know, people are literally in this world where if Trump says it, no matter how good it is, they're not going to support it. Or if Trump says it, it's always right, no matter how wrong it might be. That's a real bad way to go through life.
So someone sent an email to my wife, Mary, Friday morning. And it was an article from a staff member of Vito Fossella,
okay,
who I know very well. You know, I'd say, you know, cross the aisle on a short list of 5. I like him. And the article was about my maturation and coming to understand what the dangers of socialism are. Mm. And the person was writing that, you know, this is really an example for other Democrats, and that other Democrats should follow some of the statements that I've made and criticisms I've made of the party and that kind of thing. And obviously, there's no reason that I wouldn't like that, you know? But there's a part of me that wants to remind myself that I'm still a Democrat. Mm. In other words, some of these conversations that maybe I've been more public about, I probably should have had privately with the individuals who, you know, were suggesting this. But there is a point that you don't want to become the poster child for, you know, everything that went wrong,
right,
with the party. And, you know, thinking about that, I was, you know, just able to recognize that there is such a problem with these people who are bastardizing principles and ideals and acting the way they do. And they think they're going to be successful at the polls. I am 100% sure that they will not be.
Well, let's begin Jake Novak's Help David Paterson Back to the Democratic Party therapy right now.
Okay.
And one of the things that I think I could help you do is remind people that there are some instances where government management is necessary. So I would start with, I mean, I this wouldn't get people's fire, but I would start with, for example, urban planning, roads, highways, and things like that. Now, I am a huge fan of privatized rail lines. You know, there's one in Texas now. The Bright Line in Florida is wonderful.
Yeah.
But there still needs to be some government oversight. They can't build the railroad through my living room. You know, I need to have there has to be some planning involved. So that's one thing, although that isn't exactly going to get people marching in the streets. But it could be one place where you work. I mean, but for me, I guess my favorite thing would be to do something that I've always said to you, and I've said it on this program, that we have a problem. The advocating for minorities in this country now incorporates being more in favor of law and order. understanding that the victims of the crimes that are being committed by our system now, where people are getting let out with no bail and things like, they're not robbing the people in Park Avenue. They're not. And when they do, believe me, it'll be a national story. They're killing the people in Soundview in the Bronx. They're killing people in rougher areas of Brooklyn. It's not the white rich people. I think that there's some misbegotten leftist rich kids who think they're letting out the jails and now Whitey's going to get it. Like, Whitey ain't getting it, okay? I'm telling you right now, it ain't happening. And this would be great. I would love for Democrats to basically say, I'm the real advocate for minorities here because you guys are killing us.
That's exactly right. That it is. And we're going to come back with my response right after we break again to give both of us a chance to figure out what we're going to say here on WABC, The Left versus the Right. You're with Jake Novak and David Paterson. We'll be back.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Left versus the Right.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back on The Left versus the Right. And what I would say, Jake, is if you think about this show from the beginning, where we have moved is to the politics affecting the day-to-day lives of people. So, for instance, people go on dating sites and they want to know what the political view is of the person they start talking to. This is it's a recipe for disaster.
It is. First of all, politics and romance. I don't care what movie you saw or if you know about the James Carville, what her name, I forgot the name of his wife, thing. That's not the norm. Politics and romance don't mix very much. Obviously, I'm very interested in politics. It's a huge part of my job, but I'm not ever going to start talking about politics in a dating situation, let alone just a social situation, unless I'm really pressed to do so. It's not like I'll talk about it, but I also read the room. I've been begged to talk about my take on certain news events in social situations, and I can tell, like, this room will not want to hear it, despite the fact that they're asking for it. So I'll find another thing to talk about. Then I'll move to religion, the other topic, which is great. But for some reason, people are more accepting of that. But I will tell you that in years ago on the dating sites, and it wasn't that many years ago, you would see outright bigotry. People would say, well, I saw that you were listed conservative. They ask you, what's your political bent? I'd say conservative. I don't say Republican or voter.
Right.
And they would say things like, okay, but if you voted for Trump, we've got nothing to talk about. I'm like, boy, I guess thank you for letting me know right away that you're not the kind of person who has the stability and decency that I want to date anyway. But, let's say I agreed with you. Let's say you said, hey, if you didn't vote for Trump, I want to talk to you. Well, you know what? Even if I agree with you politically, I don't know if this is going to work out, even on a first date, because politics are not how I choose, who I'm attracted to, that kind of thing. And it's just kind of it's a buzzkill. It really is for me. Again, even if you agree with all my positions, I mean, that's not really what I'm looking for anyway. But I say this, I think I've said this on this program also. There's no such thing as a non-religious person. And I am seeing the religion of politics replace Christianity or Judaism or whatever.
Exactly. It's replacing the mosque. It's replacing the church. It's replacing the synagogue. And meanwhile, that's probably where we need to go to try to recapture just the whole sense of being and the whole sense of an afterlife or whatever it is that people in the past have chosen to, follow the ethics based on how they were taught, not just in school, but in the religious institutions.
If you can find a non-politicized church or synagogue. I mean, I crave the transcendence of my Judaism. I don't want to have a rabbi come and say, okay, here are the people you should vote for tomorrow. I want a rabbi to say, like, these are the ethics that we're looking for in the people who serve us. And, there's a lot in the Bible about who's supposed to serve us. People who hate graft. Literally, the term hating graft is something that God tells us in the Bible is something that we should want in a leader, in a judge. Things like that. not the specifics. Not, okay, on item 3, So when and even on a specific policy, like I'm a rabbi for gun control. Like, oh, yeah? Maybe you should go to Israel and decide how good. I mean, really, you don't know what you're talking about, and you shouldn't be talking about that from the pulpit. I'm sorry, you shouldn't. And if I wanted to hear the Democratic Party platform set to music, I'll go to a Joan Baez concert. I'm not going to a synagogue or a church. And the same goes for the Republicans. If I wanted to hear the Republican Party platform set to music, I will go to a Ted Nugent concert. I'm not going to go to the synagogue. I need more than that. I need someone who has transcendent types of philosophies that we are all lucky to see in Judaism and Christianity, and also in Islam when it's taught in that way. And this is very disturbing to me that I see religious. Listen, I know religious fundamentalists really well. I know I'm very familiar with them. I grew up near them and around them my entire life, and I know one when I see one. And these anti-Trump folks are absolute religious fundamentalists. And I think some of the people who go to 50 Trump rallies are like that too, although I really don't think that they're such a large number of them. But there's a large number of these anti-Trump cultists out there who are, just like Jim Jones, willing to drink the Kool-Aid and are basically destroying themselves over their hatred of Trump. And, and I think the best example is this guy who waded into the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool to pull up the lining. This guy is going to ruin his life. For what? To commit a small petty act of vandalism because he hates Trump? This is so sad. We're back to me being sad. Darn. But this has made me so sad. You cleared that up
for me, Jake. I thought he'd hit a golf ball in there.
Yeah. Whatever. But this to me, and so this is, again, and I don't think organized religion is very perfect either. There's a lot of problems with it. I mean, and I'll just talk about my own. I mean, I dislike the central office aspect of religious Judaism in this country. It's still very New York based. By the way, even many parts of the religious communities in Israel listen to the central office in Brooklyn and Manhattan. To me, which frustrates me. I don't love that. We don't have a pope in Judaism, and that's because the localized rabbinic leadership is supposed to be what's important, not what some guy at Yeshiva University says or at 770 Eastern Parkway says. To me, that's really bad. So I'm not here to say Judaism is better. I got plenty of criticisms of it. But honestly, at least after the Jewish service, you get what we talked about before, the wine and the goodies. You don't get that at a political rally. You just don't.
No, you don't. I must say, that was quite a rendition, Mr. Novak. I really thought that was great. So, where are we on the clock? How much time do we have?
We got 3 minutes.
We've got 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think we can talk a little bit about just where we are now in the midterms. Well, actually, I have another piece of advice for you for the date. Let's bring David Paterson back to a good standing in the Democratic Party in a great way.
Beautiful. Let's hear it.
Let's have you start looking for an appropriate Democrat to run for president. These names that we're hearing, which is mostly Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, are not acceptable. They're not acceptable if you want to be a Democratic Party again that people like.
Completely.
So who could we bat around? I mean, I don't think it's this guy from Maryland, the governor there, who has stolen valor issues now,
Wes
apparently.
Moore.
Yeah, Wes Moore. I don't think he's the guy. Probably not anyone in the Senate. The Senate has always been a lousy place to find a president because senators don't have to do a darn thing. Governors are better.
Right.
A deference to you, not only in deference to you, but it just happens to be true. It's not a coincidence that somebody like Clinton and Jimmy Carter were the only Democrats who won during that long period of losing. They at least ran states, for better or for worse. Josh Shapiro, I don't know. I think there's no chance the Democrats would nominate him. So.
Raising a boatload of money right now.
Oh, he is. Okay,
Raising
so
a
he's going to. I guess they're going to expect him to hand it over to the person they're really going to let run. I don't know. J.B. Pritzker, who I think is also a bad idea. So that's the way. I mean, find someone who really looks good.
So I tell you what.
Who's
Give
that?
me a week.
Yeah,
we'll come
let's
back
have a
here,
week. Yeah,
3:00 on Saturday, July the 18th. I will reveal who I think. I will go on a mission to find the Democratic candidate that is going to run for president. Is that good?
Well, yeah, but I think if you find a great candidate in the words, in Plato of the Republic, I think you're going to find someone who doesn't want to be the president.
That's
to make them great.
Very possible.
Probably will be most likely, but That's okay. You know, we've had great presidents who didn't really want that job, and then of course, you know, a lot of them were vice presidents.
Harry Truman, I think, was
and Calvin Coolidge was not looking to be our president, and lost a lot, by the way, by having to be president. His son died because he was living at the White House. Long story, but you can read that, read up on that. I think Amity Shlaes wrote the book about Calvin Coolidge and describes how his young son died on the White House lawn. You know, he contracted an infection on the White House tennis court, I think it was. He sacrificed a lot to be president. A lot. So we've had some great, and people like Ulysses Grant too, who was not the greatest president, but his first term, there were some great things he did. In addition, most notably, mobilizing the army to get rid of the KKK, which he doesn't get enough credit for. Yeah. So we'll have to find a reluctant king, like Plato's philosopher king.
So from 770 Eastern Parkway to 770 AM WABC, you've been listening to The Left versus the Right with Jake Novak and David Paterson. And tune in next week, and I will tell you who's going to be our next president. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?